MediaLinks for those that don't know me. And a couple years ago, we finished VSF technical recommendations TR07 and 08. And in the past couple months, there's been a number of requests for some updates to those documents. So we've just recently reformed the team to go over those requests. We've only had one meeting since this came up, but I just wanted to provide a little details on what we're seeing and how that's progressing. And then also if there's any folks that want to join the team or provide some input, you can reach out to me. So we'll take a walk through this. There's 34 VSF members that have joined the activity group. We've had one meeting. There was 21 members attending that meeting. So this does seem to have some significant attention. The goals for the activity group pretty much have been sorted into two categories. One is to add JPEG-XS temporal differential coding capability sets or profiles to the current work for both TR07 and TR08. And then the second piece is maybe kind of a catch-all, but essentially to provide clarifications in the documents for better understanding and more consistent implementations. And I will mention this as just sort of a topic. JPEG-XS can be implemented over various hardware and software platforms. And in the past, if we talk about JPEG 2000, it was mostly implemented in hardware. And the hardware implementations tend to be fairly consistent and uniform. The software implementations are a little bit different, and I think the second point there is that there is some difference in understanding of the standard and implementations between the two, and they don't always play well together. So that's something that we want to try to address as we move forward. So first piece of this, we'll just talk about the temporal differential coding. So the main point here is that we want to add capability sets for temporal differential coding. Just wanted to explain briefly a little bit about TDC. This makes use of a new coding tool that allows the wavelet coefficients to be predicted from a frame buffer. The frame buffer is compressed memory buffer that always keeps track of the last version of the wavelet coefficients. So it's continuously updated with each new frame. So obviously you're going to use more memory when you do this, but it is a mechanism that can optimize quality at a given rate or allow reduced bit rates. So it's an improvement in JPEG-XS. There's a number of different ways or settings for this so that the user would have some capability of setting that. You see that in the next to the bottom bullet there that there's different levels for 3 bits per pixel, 4.5, and 12 bits. The higher compression needs more memory. So that's new items in JPEG-XS. Of course, there's no profiles in TR07 or 08 for this yet. So that's one of the things that has to be done. We look at this. In section 10 of TR08, there's capability sets and interoperability points. So one suggestion is to add TDC capability to this section of the document. The TDC set could be a single table. However, in the existing table, it's divided by synchronous, asynchronous, IPMX, full HD, 4K, and 8K capabilities. So we might have to break it down in the same fashion. We'll have to determine that so that you could have a separate TDC capability set that's broken down into multiple subsets. So that's one way of doing that. We'll we'll go over that and figure out the best way to do it. And then the last item on the bullet list is that for Tier 08, we refer to RFC 9134, which describes the RTP packet and packet structure for JPEG-XS. There is a slight change that's needed to that document, so the team will liaise with the folks that are working on that in the IETF and make sure that that document is revised as well. So that was the first category on TDC. The second piece of it is just overall document improvements, and this is specific clarifications to allow more consistent understanding and implementations with better interoperability. So there's a wide range of topics that have been brought up already. I think there was about 20 different items on the list, and we're still collecting items for this. But I just figured I'd mention a few of the topics that have come up. This was a couple years ago when we finished TR07. We had found one or two errors in H222, and the ITU group agreed to make those corrections, and they have actually been made since then. But there is a little bit of confusion there. If someone implemented and didn't understand what we had said in TR07 and used the original H222 documents, they could have done some or made different implementation, especially relative to interlace handling. So that's something we want to be more clear on in the TR07 document. Perhaps adding some examples of how to do that so it's really clear. And then this is kind of a big point that we've seen, that in terms of the elementary stream buffer and signal handling, the JPEG-XS is such a minimal latency codec that even a couple milliseconds of jitter, dejittering that, doubles or even triples the overall latency of the base product. So you have to be really careful about that. Like 2110, where when that standard was done, the timing and buffer models were considered, and you wind up with narrow linear or wide profiles. We may have to do something like that for JPEG-XS in MPEG-2TS, which is kind of a new approach. But we may have to mention or add some type of information about that in the standard. Last item is just an example of this. There's a field that is defined differently in TR07 and TR08, and that's fairly inconsistent. So we'd like to correct that in the next revision. So this is just sort of a few of the examples of requests that have come in, and we're still collecting requests before we actually dive into each one and figure out how to revise the document for them. So just an overview on our schedule. The activity group is going to meet every 2 weeks. We're right now trying to capture specific goals. Then we'll review those and clarify them and determine and agree on the document changes, and then publish revised new documents. We haven't estimated the time of the effort because we haven't collected all of the individual information, but I could probably just roughly guess probably 4 to 6 months to complete all the work, so that we'd have, I feel fairly confident we should have a new updated versions by the end of the year. That's just a kind of a swag at that right now. And thank you for listening, and if I have any questions, certainly like to answer them if we can.